Mr. Buster Flips!
Mr. Buster Flips! Mr. Buster Flips! Mr. Buster Flips!
Welcome to this second video summarizing the plot of Romeo and Juliet. As you may recall, Act 2 ended happily with Friar Lawrence marrying Romeo and Juliet, but he did so with the words, "I hope this doesn't turn out bad in the end." Spoiler alert, it's about to turn out bad. So Romeo and Juliet have just gotten married, Friar Lawrence has finished the wedding, and Romeo has left the wedding, and they've decided they're going to meet up this evening for their wedding night. We then shift to a street in Verona where two of Romeo's best friends, Benvolio and Mercutio, are walking down the street and having a conversation, and they are met by the fiery Tybalt. Tybalt stops them and says, "Hey, you guys know Romeo, don't you? He dishonored my family yesterday when he showed up at my party. I need to have a word with him." And they try to defend Romeo's honor, and they start essentially exchanging words and then exchanging blows with Tybalt. In steps Romeo, coming straight from the wedding, and he sees a major problem here, right? Because now technically he and Tybalt are related, right? He is now married to Juliet, who's Tybalt's cousin, so they are kind of cousins-in-law, I guess. And so he's saying, no, stop fighting. Put up your swords, boys. We don't want to have any fighting here. Let's all try to be friends. And Tybalt just gets more furious by this. What is this silliness? Pull out your sword and let's fight. And Romeo continues, no, I have a good reason to love you. We should stop fighting. We should love each other. And Mercutio, who's also a little bit fiery, though not as angry maybe as Tybalt, tries to kind of confront Tybalt as well. And in the end, in this kind of scuffle that happens, Tybalt, under Romeo's arm, stabs Mercutio and gives him a fatal blow. So Mercutio is seriously wounded. He expresses this to Romeo, saying, "I'm dying, you've caused my death." And then eventually he falls down. Tybalt and his friends run away and flee the scene because they know that the prince will kill them if they are caught having fought in the street. And so there's this teary moment where Mercutio says goodbye to Romeo as he dies. And as Mercutio dies in his arms, Romeo is filled with rage. He forgets about the whole cousin thing and he runs after Tybalt to take revenge after the killing of Mercutio. He catches up with Tybalt, they have a fight, and eventually Romeo stabs and kills Tybalt. Unfortunately, he is found out. People see him, obviously, and he's found out, and the prince declares that you, Romeo, I said I would take your life, but because you're young and because Tybalt had already killed Mercutio, I'm not going to kill your life. I'm going to take your life and kill you. I am going to banish you from the city. You are not allowed to ever be seen in Verona again. That is his royal decree, and Romeo can do nothing but comply. He needs to leave the city this evening and never return. So in the following scene, we get to meet the nurse again. The nurse comes into Juliet's room, very distraught, to report to Juliet that Tybalt has been killed. She does this in a very roundabout way, where for a while Juliet thinks that Romeo is the one who's dead. But eventually we get the message across. Tybalt is being killed by Romeo. And so Juliet is kind of wow, because Tybalt was essentially the closest thing she had to a brother. He is now killed by her husband. And that kind of causes a conflict in her mind. But essentially she says, well, I need to be obedient to my lord, my new husband. This is a very patriarchal society. And so she is still happy that he's okay. And she, is still upset, of course, about Tybalt. Romeo, at the same time, who's hiding out in Friar Lawrence's cell, is told by Friar Lawrence the news that he has been banished. And he says, well, this is worse than death. I'm newly married, my love is here, and now I'm being sent off from Verona. This is terrible. But Friar Lawrence says, hey, we'll work it out. Don't worry, don't stress about this. Go and have your wedding night, and then flee before the sun comes up, and then we will work out what to do after that. So Romeo gets himself ready to go to Juliet that evening. In the meantime, in the Capulet household, Juliet is greatly upset, and her parents assume that it's the loss of Tybalt that's caused her this big grief. They think she's way too sad for what she should be, but they feel really sorry for her. She, of course, is upset that Romeo has been banished. She's also worried about what the future will look like now that he's being sent out of the city. But her parents, think that she's being upset with the killing of Tybalt. So when Paris comes back and says, hey, guys, I talked about this yesterday, I really want to marry Juliet, the parents think, oh, you know what, this might be the solution. Maybe if Juliet gets married, she will be happy. She'll forget about Tybalt and she can be merry and joyful again. So they accept on Juliet's behalf that she is to marry Paris, but they say, so obviously yesterday it was, we can't let her get married because she's not 14 yet. But now they're saying, you know what, it's been another day. It's okay. She can get married, but she can't get married yet because obviously Tybalt just died. We need to bury him tomorrow, and then she needs a couple of days to grieve. So let's get married on Thursday. On Thursday, Paris, you can marry Juliet. So Juliet does not yet know about her pending nuptials to Paris. Instead, she goes along with the planned wedding night with Romeo. He comes over, they spend the night together, they fulfill and consummate their marriage. And then upon the morning, when they hear the singing of the lark, that signals that morning is here, they reluctantly get out of bed, and Romeo climbs out the balcony and runs away to escape from the city for the moment until they have a new plan about how they're going to proceed in the future. And then, to add insult to injury, concluding Act 3, Lady Capulet comes in and talks to Juliet and says, yes, I see you're upset. I can understand why you're upset. And Juliet does this really clever twist of how she pretends that she's upset with Tybalt, but really she's upset that Romeo is banished. And Lady Capulet says, well, you're lucky. I have the solution. On Thursday, you are getting married to Paris. And Juliet saying, of course I'm not. I will never marry Paris. And I'm not in a mindset to marry anyone. And leave me alone. And she runs to her room and slams the door and all that sort of thing. So Juliet hurries over to Friar Lawrence and tells him about the misery and how she's about to become a bigamist because she's going to have a second husband, and this is all horrible, and but she's implying that this is your fault because you married me and now I'm in this trouble. And so Friar Lawrence comes up with a new plan. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Today is Tuesday. Tomorrow is Wednesday, the night before your wedding. Make sure you're on your own in your bedroom, and then when you go to bed, you're going to drink this bottle. This may look like poison, but it's not poison. But what it's going to do is it's going to make it seem like you are dead, and you're going to sleep for 24 hours. Actually, correction, I think it's 42 hours. And then you'll wake up and you'll be fine. And I'll make sure that Romeo's there when you wake up, and he will take you away, and you can live together somewhere else. And no one is going to have to marry Paris, and everyone's going to be happy ever after. The rest of Act 4 then is just really a lot of acting. She goes home and she apologizes to her mom and dad for refusing Paris. She says, of course, I'm going to marry him. You guys know what's best for me. I'll marry Paris. And then she goes to bed that night. She drinks the potion. The house is all being set up and ready for the party, and everyone's preparing for that in scene 3. And then finally, Act 4, scene 4, the nurse comes to her bedroom and discovers Juliet dead. Act 4, scene 5. And that is the conclusion of Act 4. In the meantime, to escape being killed, Romeo has followed the rules of the banishment. He has left the city and gone to Mantua, where he's staying with a friend of Friar Lawrence's. And he is meant to be told about Juliet's death, but there is an issue with the friar who's sent to tell Romeo about this fake death of Juliet. He's stuck in a house where the plague has broken out. He's not allowed to come out, and therefore he doesn't make it across to Romeo. He's locked up for 24 hours in this house of plague. And so Romeo doesn't hear of the fake death from him. Instead, he hears of it from his friend Peter, who comes to Mantua and delivers the grim news that Juliet has died in her sleep. And Romeo says, well, if she's dead, I'm going to die with her. So he goes off to an apothecary and he buys himself some poison, hops on his horse and rides across to back to Verona to be with Juliet. Act 5, Scene 2 is back in Friar Lawrence's cell, where he hears the news that his colleague did not manage to deliver the message, that Romeo is not aware of this fake death, and he gets really worried and he runs off to the graveyard to be there for Juliet when she wakes up, because otherwise she's going to wake up in a tomb full of dead bodies. So they run across. He runs across to the graveyard. So Romeo arrives in the graveyard where he is to die alongside Juliet. But outside the tomb stands Paris. Paris is there because he obviously was in love with Juliet and he was going to marry her, and he is now outside reading poems and singing songs and grieving the loss of his young wife-to-be. And Romeo demands that he moves away so he can get into the tomb. And of course, Paris says, no, you can't go into the tomb. And the two of them pull out their swords. And eventually, Romeo kills Paris outside the tomb. He breaks into the tomb and he finds Juliet dead in that grave chamber. So he drinks another bottle. This time, the bottle has real poison in it. And Romeo passes away. And just as he kind of closes his eyes in death, Juliet sits up and wakes and looks around and sees, oh, hi, Romeo. Oh, no, Romeo, you just died. And she obviously is grimly disappointed. She tries to kiss his lips to taste the last poison there. Maybe that will kill her too. But it doesn't work out. So instead, she pulls the knife out of his belt and she stabs herself to death right next to Romeo. And obviously, as the two lovers fall dead, in comes Friar Lawrence and says, hey, wait, something's wrong. And then obviously he's too late. He can't stop it. And he finds first Paris dead outside and then the two lovers dead inside the tomb. And then in comes everyone else. So the parents come in and say, oh my goodness, everyone is dead. This is so sad. I'm so upset. Everything is terrible. I don't know why we were fighting so much. If we hadn't been fighting, then probably our children would be alive still. And then lastly, in comes Prince Escalos. And tells them, yes, you're right. This is all really silly. It's your fault that they died. If you had been nicer to each other, then everything would have been fine. So from now on, we're going to bury your strife. Everyone's going to be happy. And we're going to be sorry that we lost these two young lovers. And that essentially is the end of the plot. So hopefully this gives you a working understanding of the play as we get into reading it, so we can really appreciate the poetry, the nuance, and the drama of it, rather than focusing on the plot, just like the Elizabethans would have watched the play back in 1596. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm looking forward to working through this play in class with you.